Well, here's a name you haven't heard in a while, Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. When last did you hear that name said out loud on a news broadcast? Well, she has penned a new, somewhat hard-hitting piece on the News 24 website where she talks about freedom and how it requires all of us to be responsible. Ramphele says she sees that the private sector is a key enabler of state capture and lawlessness. To tell us more about this, we're joined by Dr. Ramphele herself, joining us from our Cape Town studios tonight. She's co-founder of Reimagine SA. Very good evening to you, Doctor, and thank you for your time. So this all started, the inspiration for this piece that you've written began with a trip to King Williamstown recently. What was it about the trip that moved you so much?
Well, we had gone to King Williamstown this last weekend to bury Steve Biko's younger sister, and walking or driving into the township, you pass through King Williamstown, a little town which used to be so beautiful. It's just litter, and litter everywhere. The Steve Biko Center is like a beacon of hope on the hill as you enter the township, but it is surrounded by chaos and more litter. The Buffalo River, which is a beautiful river that passes through King Williamstown on its way to East London, is just a dead stream. No bird, no frog, nothing that shows life because of the level of pollution. And this, in my view, is a metaphor of how our country, which is so beautiful, is being neglected by governments at the national, provincial, and local level, and us, the citizens. We live in environments which are not dignified. And the question is, why are we not taking responsibility for this freedom that so many people sacrifice their lives for, but also the freedom that's supposed to have meaning for the lives of everybody? But the majority of South Africans, the 80% who live in these poor rural towns, townships, and villages, they are immersed in pollution, litter, and with very little infrastructure.
But is it not unfair, Dr. Ramphele, to suggest that the majority of South Africans, as you say in this piece, and I'm paraphrasing here, have essentially ceded power back to the state and are no longer in control, when millions of South Africans, as we know, are simply battling to stay alive from one day to the next and put bread on the table?
We used to live like that before we woke up as students in the 70s to say that freedom is never given to a people. Freedom is taken through struggle by a people. And to be free, you've got to free yourself. Your consciousness that says, I am a human being, I deserve respect and dignity, and I am going to assert my dignity by dealing with anything that is an affront to my dignity. That's what we did. And we mobilized not just students at university level, but at high school level, trade unions, faith-based communities, even people in the private sector. The point is, it is not unfair to say we did cede power. We looked at Mandela and said, here's our Messiah. He said repeatedly, this freedom was not won by one person or one organization. It was won by the efforts of everybody. And yet, when you speak to people in those poor environments, even those who are professionals, they'll tell you that we were freed by the ANC and therefore they have a right to rule. That's not correct. The ANC was a major part of the struggle, but certainly we were all there in different forms, and particularly those who were living inside the country fought a valiant struggle. And to cede our agency in securing this freedom has meant that we have tolerated the kind of irresponsibility, unaccountability, which today we talk of as state capture. Imagine how far we would have been if the $500 billion plus that has been stolen over the last, we know, 10 years, but it didn't start in the last 10 years. The arms deal was the beginning of state capture. We didn't need arms. There is no war we were fighting. But we had an arms deal by the ANC government in order to secure the benefits of procurement, which we know is being abused.
Okay, so I want to stay, Dr. Ramphele. Apologies, because again, I'm just going to remind you that we are sadly pressed for time here, but I want to stick with the point you made about how in your era, during the days of the fight against apartheid, you were all actively involved in fighting for your rights. And people will say to you that, in fact, it is the poorest of the poor in this country who every other week we see on television, here on the radio, and see newspapers holding government to account through protests and various other means. We've got NGOs, the Right to Know campaign, and many others who are involved in that space trying to hold government to account. Is that not taking control?
No, that is definitely taking control, but the problem is to have sporadic protests that in some cases degenerate into destruction of public property, which it does not belong to the government, but belongs to us. It's an indication that people they vacillate between passive aggression. I know, and I really salute the many civil society organizations that are doing a sterling job in holding government accountable. The point I'm making in the article and I'm making now is it should take more than just civil society organizations. It should take every citizen, every voter, to use that freedom to vote in a positive way. There's no point in voting for the same councillors who are not delivering the basic services at local level and then turn around and burn a public library. The question is, how do we make sure that citizens know that the power to elect those who are in government is in their hands? But to do that, they need to be mobilized, not individual actions, but we, the people of this country, in the same way that we mobilize to fight against apartheid, we should continue to mobilize to fight against abuse of power in whatever guise it comes. And so that's the main point. It isn't that people are doing nothing, but it is that we are not doing enough.
All right, we've got a question for you, Dr. Ramphele, actually from one of our viewers tonight, who says he wants to talk about the Dinokeng scenarios, which you were part of, and similar messaging to what you've written here came out at the time. Why was that not taken seriously?
Well, the Dinokeng scenarios, in a sense, was talking to the possibility of what has unfolded over the last 10, 15 years, that if we, the citizens, are not actively working and walking together, we will end up either walking apart, each one for himself, or walking behind a government which is unaccountable. We've done both. What we haven't done is to walk together. And walking together means to have citizens who are mobilized around a common vision which we painted in our constitution to build this South Africa as a country united in its diversity that is committed to social justice and the respect and the promotion of human dignity. That South Africa cannot be built by people who only look at what's in it for them. It can be built only if we go back to the wisdom of Africa. Ubuntu, that my freedom is incomplete if you are not free. And our freedom is not effective if we are not using it to hold those who are in public office, who are supposed to serve us, accountable to deliver on the promises of freedom so that our children, our grandchildren can live in a country that they are proud of. Importantly, we have climate change upon us. There are emergencies everywhere. We have seen tornadoes, we have seen droughts, we have seen severe water shortages. The people who are likely to suffer most are the poorest amongst us. That's again a call to all of us. We have to insist that government take the steps to make sure that we do not have an energy strategy that continues to support coal. We need to have renewable energy so we can have cleaner air, cleaner water, and people living in a country that is sustainable.